The Uxkhali Combat Institute sat on the edge of a gas giant's moon. All gleaming metal and impossible architecture, the kind of place that screamed, "We're better than you, and we have the engineering degrees to prove it." It was the most prestigious military training facility in the known galaxy, which meant it was also the most insufferable. Recruits from 100 worlds came here to learn how to kill things efficiently, and more importantly, how to look good doing it. The training hall could have fit 3 football fields inside it, with ceilings so high they disappeared into artificial clouds. Very dramatic, very expensive, very Uxkhali. The floor was some kind of adaptive smart material that could shift from solid to liquid to somewhere in between, depending on what fresh hell the instructors wanted to put you through that day. Around the perimeter, observation decks jutted out like the box seats at an opera house, because apparently even alien death schools had a sense of theater. Rockmal stood at the center of it all, and he was exactly the kind of nightmare you'd expect from a species that had conquered half the galaxy before breakfast. 4 arms, each one thick as a tree trunk, and corded with muscle that looked like it had been carved from granite by an angry sculptor. His skin was a deep purple gray, covered in ridged plates that served as natural armor. 2 legs, digitigrade, built for explosive movement. His head was broad and flat, with 6 eyes arranged in a semicircle that gave him nearly 360-degree vision. No blind spots, no mercy. He'd been an instructor here for 15 cycles, and his reputation preceded him like a bad smell. Rockmal didn't train soldiers, he broke recruits, some literally. The medical wing had a whole section unofficially named after him. "Welcome," Rockmal said, his voice like gravel being chewed by a garbage disposal, "to the place where your delusions of competence come to die." Around him, 24 recruits stood in something approximating attention. The Plixoth, insectoid things with too many legs and compound eyes that reflected light in unsettling ways, chittered nervously. The Lumix, crystalline beings that looked like someone had taught geology to walk, hummed at frequencies that made your teeth ache. The Ko'un, predatory and sleek with retractable claws and an attitude problem, at least looked confident. Stupid, but confident. And then there was Jason. Human. Male. Approximately 1.8 meters tall, which was short by galactic standards. Brown hair, brown eyes, the kind of forgettable face that wouldn't stand out in a crowd of 3. He wore the standard recruit uniform, gray and black, designed to fit a dozen different body types, and succeeding at fitting none of them particularly well. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, weight evenly distributed, breathing slow and steady. He looked, for all intents and purposes, like someone who'd wandered into the wrong building and was too polite to leave. "Humans," Rockmal said, and the way he pronounced it made it sound like a disease. "Our newest addition to the Institute, courtesy of the Galactic Union's infinite wisdom and finite common sense." A few of the recruits laughed. The Ko'un especially seemed to find this hilarious, their shoulders shaking with predatory amusement. Jason didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't bristle, didn't do anything except continue standing there like he was waiting for a bus. "Your species," Rockmal continued, circling the formation with 2 arms clasped behind his back and 2 hanging loose at his sides, "comes from a planet with 0.98 standard gravities. Your bone density is embarrassing. Your muscle fiber composition is inefficient. Your reaction time is, charitably, adequate. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom, no adaptive camouflage. You are, by every measurable standard, prey animals who got lucky with opposable thumbs." More laughter. One of the Plixoth actually clicked its mandibles together in what might have been their version of applause. Jason's expression didn't change. If anything, he looked mildly interested, like Hrockmal was explaining the weather forecast. "The Galactic Union," Hrockmal said, stopping directly in front of Jason and looking down at him, which required tilting his head only slightly, because Jason was taller than the average human and Hrockmal was shorter than the average Uxkali, a fact that probably contributed to his winning personality, has decided that humanity is ready to join the ranks of civilized species. That you're ready to stand alongside warriors who have been perfecting combat for millennia, while your ancestors were still figuring out which end of a stick to hold. "To be fair," Jason said, his voice calm and conversational, "we got pretty good with the sticks eventually." The hall went quiet. You didn't interrupt Hrockmal. That was Rule 1, written in the blood and broken bones of recruits past. Hrockmal's 6 eyes focused on Jason with the intensity of targeting lasers. "You think you're funny, human?" "Not particularly," Jason said, "but I've been told I have my moments." One of Hrockmal's secondary arms twitched. The recruits nearest to Jason took a step back, suddenly very interested in the ceiling. "What's your name, human?" "Jason." "Jason," Hrockmal repeated, like he was testing how it felt to say something so simple, so unadorned by the clicks and glottal stops that made most alien names sound like someone gargling marbles. "Tell me, Jason, what makes you think you belong here?" "I don't, really," Jason said, and there was something in his tone. Not quite humor, not quite resignation, something in between. "But I was asked to come, so here I am." "Asked," Hrockmal said. "Not ordered, not conscripted, asked. That's how we do things, mostly. Asking, talking, reaching consensus." How wonderfully primitive. Hrockmal's mandibles, because of course he had mandibles, tucked under his jaw like nature's switchblades, clicked together twice. "Tell me, Jason, have you ever killed anything?" "Define killed." "Ended a life. Stopped a heart. Made something that was alive become not alive." Jason thought about it for a moment. "I ran over a possum once. Felt bad about it for a week." "A possum? Small mammal. Nocturnal. Not very bright, evolutionarily speaking. And you felt bad. It didn't ask to be in the road." Hrockmal stared at him, all 6 eyes unblinking, the kind of stare that had made recruits confess to crimes they hadn't committed just to make it stop. Jason stared back, not aggressive, not challenging, just looking, meeting eyes, being present. "This," Hrockmal announced, turning away from Jason and addressing the rest of the recruits, "is what we're working with. A species so soft, so divorced from the realities of survival, that they mourn vermin. This is what the Union wants to welcome into our ranks. This is what I'm expected to turn into something resembling a warrior." He turned back to Jason. "It's not going to happen. You're going to wash out, probably in the next hour, possibly in the next 10 minutes. And when you limp back to your little blue planet with your tail between your legs, do humans have tails? No? Pity. It would give you something to hide. You can tell your people that the galaxy isn't a place for species who apologize to their food." "We don't apologize to our food," Jason said. "We cook it first. Seems rude otherwise." A sound rippled through the recruits. It might have been laughter, quickly stifled when Hrockmal's head snapped around. "Enough," he said, and the word hit like a physical force. "We begin with a simple exercise, an assessment of your reflexes, your combat instincts, your ability to respond to threats. I will attack each of you once. Your job is to not die. The medical team is standing by, which should tell you everything you need to know about the expected success rate." He gestured to the observation deck, where, sure enough, a team of what looked like medical personnel stood ready with floating stretchers and equipment that probably had settings ranging from minor trauma to retrieve what's left. "We'll go in order," Rockmal said. "Smallest to largest, weakest to strongest." His eyes found Jason. "Which means you're first, human." Jason stepped forward. The smart material floor rippled under his feet, adjusting to his weight and gait. He stopped about 3 meters from Rockmal, hands still clasped behind his back. "Any questions?" Rockmal asked. "Just one," Jason said. "When you attack, will you announce it? Or is this more of a surprise situation?" "Combat doesn't announce itself." "So, surprise then." "Got it." "Any other questions?" "I'm good, thanks." Rockmal's mandibles clicked again. "Then we begin, when I—" He moved. No warning, no telegraph, no wind-up. One moment, he was standing still. The next, his primary right arm was lancing forward, fist aimed directly at Jason's face with enough force to shatter concrete. The kind of punch that didn't just knock you out, it knocked you into next week and possibly a different time zone. Time didn't slow down. That's movie nonsense. Time kept moving at exactly the speed it always moved, which was 1 second per second, last anyone checked. But Jason's hand moved faster. He caught Rockmal's wrist mid-strike, fingers wrapping around the armored plates, and stopped the punch cold. Completely. Totally. The kind of stop that suggested the punch had hit a wall, except the wall was a human hand, and the human wasn't even leaning back from the impact. Jason blinked once, twice, looked at the fist he was holding, then at Rockmal, then back at the fist. "Oh," he said, his tone genuinely apologetic. "Sorry. Have we started?" The training hall went so quiet you could have heard a pin drop, if pins made any sound dropping, which they don't really, but the metaphor stands. Rockmal's other 3 arms blurred into motion. A left hook, an uppercut, a palm strike aimed at Jason's solar plexus. 3 attacks, 3 different angles, the kind of combination that required years of training to execute and usually ended with the target in several pieces. Jason's free hand came up and deflected the left hook, redirecting it past his shoulder. He shifted his weight, let the uppercut slide past his chin close enough to ruffle his hair. The palm strike he simply wasn't there for, having stepped 6 inches to the left, while still holding Rockmal's primary right wrist. "Okay," Jason said. "Now, I think we've started." Rockmal pulled back, or tried to. Jason let go of his wrist immediately, hands up in a non-threatening gesture, the universal sign for "I'm not looking for trouble," that apparently translated across species because Rockmal stopped mid-lunge. The instructor stood there, all 4 arms tensed, breathing hard through his mandibles, which clicked and clacked like an angry typewriter. His 6 eyes were wide, pupils dilated in what might have been shock or rage, or some combination of the two that didn't have a name yet. Jason lowered his hands slowly. "Are we done, or is there more to the assessment?" The silence in the training hall had weight to it now, the kind of quiet that pressed down on your shoulders and made you want to cough, just to break the tension. The other recruits stood frozen, their various appendages and sensory organs locked onto the scene like they were watching a star go supernova in real time. "How?" Rockmal said, and his voice had lost some of its gravel, replaced by something sharper. "Did you do that?" "Do what?" "Don't play stupid, human." "I'm not playing," Jason said. "I genuinely don't know what part you're asking about." "You caught my strike." "You threw a punch at my face." "Seemed like the thing to do was not let it hit my face. I've broken reinforced steel with that punch." That's, that's impressive, Jason said, and he sounded like he meant it. I'm glad you didn't break my face then. I'm pretty attached to it. One of the Lumix, Ixolith, though Jason didn't know that yet, made a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. Might have been laughter. Hard to tell with crystalline species. Rockmal's mandibles snapped shut with a click that echoed. You think this is funny? You think humiliating me in front of my recruits is some kind of joke? I don't think I humiliated you, Jason said, his tone shifting, becoming softer somehow, more careful. You asked me to respond to a threat. I responded. That's what you wanted to assess, right? Reflexes and combat instincts? You should be unconscious. You should be bleeding. You should be on your way to the medical wing. I'd really rather not be any of those things, if it's all the same to you. Rockmal took a step forward, then another. He moved into Jason's space, close enough that Jason had to tilt his head back slightly to maintain eye contact. The instructor's breathing was still elevated, his chest plates rising and falling in a rhythm that suggested he was either furious or about to have a cardiac event. Possibly both. You want to know what I think, human? Sure. I think you got lucky. I think you saw me telegraph the strike and made a desperate grab. I think you have no idea what you're doing, and the moment you face a real opponent, you'll fold like wet paper. Jason didn't say anything, just stood there, hands at his sides, looking up at Rockmal with an expression that was hard to read. Not quite pity, not quite concern, somewhere in the uncomfortable middle. I challenge you, Rockmal said, and the words came out like a declaration of war. A proper match. Tomorrow. Full contact. Standard galactic rules. I don't think that's a good idea, Jason said. Of course you don't. Because you're scared. Yeah, Jason said, no hesitation. I'm scared. You're twice my size and have 4 arms. Being scared seems pretty reasonable. That threw Rockmal off balance. You could see it in the way his secondary arms twitched. Recruits didn't admit fear. Warriors didn't admit weakness. You bluffed. You postured. You pretended you were made of iron and bad intentions until someone proved otherwise. But, Jason continued, if you want a match, I'll do it. On one condition. You don't get to make conditions, human. We use standard galactic safety protocols. All of them. Medical monitoring, impact limiters, the works. A ripple of sound moved through the recruits. The Ko'un made a noise that was definitely laughter, sharp and barking. One of the Plixoth chittered something that the translation implants rendered as soft skin wants padding. Rockmal's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile if smiles were the stuff of nightmares. Safety protocols are for children and species with fragile constitutions. Then I guess they're perfect for me, Jason said. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. And if I leave them? Then we don't fight, and everyone goes home happy. I won't be happy. No, Jason said, and there was something in his eyes now, something that hadn't been there before. I don't suppose you will be. They stood there, human and Uxkali, locked in a staring contest that had nothing to do with eyes and everything to do with wills. The air between them felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes when your hair stands on end, and you know something's about to happen, but you're not sure if you should run or watch. Rockmal broke first. Fine. Safety protocols. Tomorrow, 6th hour. This hall. Don't be late. Wouldn't dream of it, Jason said. The instructor turned away, barking orders at the other recruits, moving them into formation for the next exercise. Jason was dismissed with a wave of one secondary arm, the kind of gesture you'd use to shoo away an insect. Jason walked to the edge of the training hall, found a spot against the wall where he could watch without being in the way. He slid down until he was sitting, knees up, arms resting on them, the picture of casual relaxation. That's when Ixolith approached. The Lumix moved like music made solid, each step a chime, each movement refracting light into patterns that hurt to look at directly. They were roughly humanoid in shape, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but that's where the similarity ended. Their body was composed of interlocking crystalline structures that shifted and rearranged constantly, like a puzzle solving itself over and over. No face, exactly, but a smooth surface where a face should be, with light pulsing beneath in patterns that might have been expressions if you knew how to read them. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Ixolith said, their voice like someone playing a glass harmonica. The translation implants worked overtime to turn the harmonics into words. "I'm leaning toward stupid," Jason said, "but I've been wrong before." You caught his wrist. He threw a punch. Seemed rude not to catch it. "I've been here for 3 cycles," Ixolith said, lowering themselves to sit beside Jason, which involved their legs folding in ways that geometry shouldn't allow. "I've seen Hrockmal put recruits through walls. Literally. Through. Walls. Sounds expensive. The Uxkhali have money to spare." Ixolith's surface pulsed in a pattern that might have been concern. "He's going to try to kill you tomorrow. You understand that, right? Not officially, not on purpose, but there will be an accident. There's always an accident when someone embarrasses him." "Has this happened before?" "Twice. Once with a Ko'un, who got a lucky hit during sparring. Once with a Plixoth, who corrected his form in front of others. Both ended up in medical suspension. The Ko'un recovered. The Plixoth, not so much." Jason was quiet for a moment, watching Hrockmal put a recruit through a grappling exercise that looked more like an execution. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're going to die," Ixolith said, their harmonics dropping to a lower register. "And I don't want to watch another person die because they made Hrockmal feel small." "I didn't mean to make him feel small." "Doesn't matter what you meant. Matters what happened." Ixolith stood, their crystalline structure catching the light and throwing rainbows across the floor. "Withdraw from the match, claim injury, claim homesickness, claim anything. Just don't show up tomorrow." "I can't do that." "Why not?" Jason looked up at them, and his expression was tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. "Because if I don't show up, everyone will think humans are cowards, and we've got enough problems without adding that to the list." Ixolith's surface went dark for a moment, then lit up again in a pattern that might have been sadness. "Then I'll see you tomorrow, or at your memorial service, whichever comes first." They walked away, chiming softly, leaving Jason alone against the wall. He sat there for a long time, watching Hrockmal train recruits with a brutality that bordered on criminal, and his expression never changed. Calm, thoughtful, like he was watching a documentary instead of a preview of his own funeral. The thing about Galactic Standard Time is that it doesn't actually match up with any planet's natural rotation, which means everyone's equally miserable about scheduling. The Institute ran on a 26-hour cycle, split into 13 two-hour blocks, because the Uxkhali had a thing about prime numbers and making life complicated. Jason spent the rest of that day observing. Not training, not practicing, just watching. He sat in the observation deck during combat drills, stood at the edge of the sparring rings during grappling sessions, and generally made himself into a piece of furniture that happened to have eyes. The other recruits gave him a wide berth. Word had spread, because word always spreads in places like this, faster than light and twice as distorted, that the human had caught Rockmal's punch and lived to tell about it. Some versions of the story had Jason throwing Rockmal across the room. Others had him dodging a killing blow by millimeters. One particularly creative version involved Jason turning invisible, which was impressive considering humans couldn't do that, and also made no sense given that everyone had watched it happen. But underneath the exaggeration was a simple truth. Jason had done something no one else had managed in 15 cycles. He'd made Rockmal look foolish. And now he was going to pay for it. Ixolith found him again during the meal period, which was less a period and more a chaotic free-for-all where recruits grabbed nutrition packs and tried to consume them before the next training block. The cafeteria, if you could call it, that was a large open space with dispensers along the walls and tables that adjusted their height based on who was sitting at them. Very egalitarian. Very uncomfortable. Jason was sitting alone, working his way through something that claimed to be protein synthesis optimized for carbon-based humanoid life forms, but tasted like someone had liquefied cardboard and added a hint of regret. "You're still here," Ixolith said, materializing beside him with a chime that made the table resonate. "Where else would I be? Packing? Running? Faking your own death? Seems like a lot of effort." Jason took another sip of his meal, made a face, took another sip anyway. "Besides, I've been thinking. Dangerous activity for someone in your position. I do it anyway. Occupational hazard." He set down the nutrition pack. "Tell me about Rockmal." "What's to tell? He's mean. He's strong. He's been breaking recruits since before I was crystallized." "No, I mean, really tell me. Where's he from? How'd he end up here? What's his story?" Ixolith's surface flickered through several colors, which might have been confusion. "Why does it matter?" "Humor me." The Lumix settled into a seat across from him, their structure rearranging to fit the chair in a way that looked deeply uncomfortable, but apparently wasn't. "Fine. Rockmal is from Uxkala Prime, obviously. Military family, third-generation combat instructor. He was supposed to be assigned to the fleet, command track, the whole prestigious career path. But something happened. No one talks about it, but the rumors say he had a son. Trainee, like us. Died during an exercise. Instructor pushed too hard. Didn't stop when he should have. And the kid didn't make it." Jason's expression shifted, something moving behind his eyes. "How long ago? 10 cycles, maybe? After that, Rockmal requested transfer here. Became an instructor himself. Said he wanted to make sure it never happened again. By being the hardest instructor in the galaxy. By being the cruelest," Ixolith corrected. "There's a difference. Hard makes you strong. Cruel just makes you broken." Jason was quiet for a long moment, staring at his nutrition pack like it held the secrets of the universe, instead of just disappointing protein synthesis. "What was the son's name?" "I don't know. Like I said, no one talks about it. But Rockmal wears something. A token. I saw it during the exercise, hanging from his equipment harness. You notice that?" "I notice a lot of things." Jason stood, picking up his half-finished meal. "Thanks for the information. What are you going to do with it?" "Probably something stupid," Jason said. "Seems to be my specialty." He left Ixolith sitting there, their crystalline form pulsing with patterns that definitely meant confusion now, possibly mixed with concern and a touch of, "What is wrong with this human?" Jason didn't go back to his quarters. Instead, he made his way through the Institute's corridors, all gleaming metal and harsh lighting, the kind of aesthetic that said, "We're serious about violence and interior design," until he found the instructor's wing. It wasn't hard to find Hrockmal's quarters. They were the ones with the door that looked like it could withstand a tactical nuclear strike, and probably had. Jason stood in front of it for a moment, hand raised to knock, then thought better of it and just pressed the door chime. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. "I know you're in there," Jason said to the door. "I can hear you breathing. Well, not here exactly, but the door's vibrating slightly with each exhale, so, you know, physics." The door slid open with a hiss that sounded annoyed, which was impressive for a door. Hrockmal stood in the doorway, all four arms crossed in an X pattern across his chest that was probably meant to be intimidating and succeeded admirably. He'd removed his training armor, wearing something that looked like a casual version of military fatigues, which on an Uxkhali meant it could still stop small arms fire. "What do you want, human?" "To talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "I disagree, but I respect your opinion." Jason didn't move, didn't try to push past, just stood there in the hallway like he had all the time in the world. "I came to offer you a way out." "A way out of what?" "The match tomorrow. I'll withdraw. Tell everyone I'm injured or scared or homesick. You save face, I go back to being the forgettable human in the corner. Everyone wins." Hrockmal's mandibles clicked slowly, deliberately. "You think I need you to save my face?" "No," Jason said. "I think you're trapped in a situation where someone's going to get hurt, and you don't actually want that to happen. But you can't see a way out that doesn't make you look weak. You presume to know what I want? I presume to guess. It's kind of what I do." "And what makes you think?" Hrockmal said, leaning down so his face was level with Jason's, all six eyes focused with laser intensity. "That I don't want to hurt you? That I'm not looking forward to tomorrow specifically, because I get to break you into small, human-sized pieces?" Jason met his gaze without flinching. "Because you wear your son's memorial token on your equipment harness, positioned right over your primary heart. Because you became an instructor after he died, trying to prevent what happened to him from happening to anyone else. Because every recruit you've sent to the medical wing, you've visited afterward. The records are public if you know where to look, and I know where to look." The hallway went very quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a ventilation system hummed. Water moved through pipes in the walls. The Institute breathed around them, oblivious to the moment happening in its corridors. "You investigated me," Hrockmal said, and his voice had gone flat, dangerous. "I researched you. There's a difference." "Why?" "Because you're not just an angry instructor. You're a father who lost his child and doesn't know how to process that grief except by making sure no one else is weak enough to die the way he did. Except that's not how it works. You can't beat strength into people. You can't brutalize them into being survivors. All you do is break them, and then you hate yourself a little more because they remind you of him." Hrockmal's primary right arm, the one Jason had caught, shot out and grabbed Jason by the front of his uniform, lifting him off the ground. Not high, just enough that Jason's toes scraped the floor. The Uxkhali's breathing had gone ragged, his chest plates heaving. "You know nothing about my son." "You're right," Jason said, and his voice was calm despite being dangled in the air by someone who could crush his rib cage without effort. "I don't. But I know about loss. I know about guilt. I know what it's like to think that if you just push hard enough, control enough variables, make everything perfect, you can prevent the bad thing from happening again. Except you can't, because life doesn't work that way, and people aren't variables you can control." "He was 12 cycles old," Hrockmal said, and his voice cracked like ice breaking. He wanted to be like me, wanted to make me proud. The instructor said he was too slow, too weak, needed to be pushed harder. So they pushed and pushed. And when his heart gave out, they said it was a genetic defect, an unforeseeable tragedy. No one's fault. But you blame yourself anyway. I should have been there, should have stopped it, should have known. Yeah, Jason said softly, you should have, and you weren't, and you didn't. And now you're here, trying to make up for it by being the thing you hate, because at least then you're in control of the cruelty. At least then you know when to stop. Rockmal set him down. Not gently, but not roughly either. Just placed him back on his feet and stepped away, all four arms hanging at his sides. Except you don't stop, Jason continued, because stopping means admitting that what you're doing isn't helping, that you're just creating more broken people in your son's memory, and he wouldn't want that. No kid wants their parent to become a monster because they died. You don't know what he'd want. No, Jason agreed, but I'm guessing he'd want you to be the father he loved, not the instructor everyone fears. Rockmal turned away, facing into his quarters. His shoulders, all four of them, were shaking slightly. Get out. I'm not trying to hurt you, Jason said. I'm trying to help. I said, get out. Okay. Jason took a step back. But the offer stands. I'll withdraw tomorrow. You don't have to do this. Yes, Rockmal said, his voice barely above a whisper. I do. Because if I don't, if I let you walk away, then everyone will know that the humans saw through me, that I'm not the unbreakable instructor, that I'm just broken. Everyone's broken, Jason said. The trick is figuring out how to be broken and still be kind. He left Rockmal standing in his doorway and walked back through the corridors, his footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Behind him, a door slid shut. Inside those quarters, an Uxkali instructor stood alone, staring at a memorial token, and tried to remember what his son's laugh sounded like. The 6th hour came with all the inevitability of a tax audit and none of the fun. The training hall was packed, not just with recruits, though they were all there, pressed against the walls and filling the observation decks, but with instructors, administrators, and what looked like half the Institute's support staff. Word had spread beyond the recruit population. The human who'd caught Rockmal's punch was going to fight the legendary instructor in a sanctioned match, and no one wanted to miss it. It was the kind of crowd that gathered for executions, back when civilizations did that sort of thing publicly. Excited, bloodthirsty, pretending they were there for the sport of it, while secretly hoping to see something break. Jason entered from the east corridor, still wearing his standard recruit uniform. No armor, no weapons, no ceremonial entrance. He just walked in like he was showing up for a shift at a particularly boring office job, hands in his pockets, expression neutral. The crowd noise dipped when they saw him, then rose again in a wave of chittering, humming, and various alien sounds that translated roughly to, "Is he serious?" and "He's going to die," and "I've got 5 credits on under 30 seconds." Ixolith was near the front, their crystalline form refracting the overhead lights into anxious patterns. They caught Jason's eye and pulsed a color that the translation implants rendered as, "Please don't be stupid," which was touching but ultimately unhelpful. Rockmal entered from the west corridor, and the crowd went wild. He was wearing full combat armor now, not the training gear from yesterday. Plates of dark metal covered his chest, arms, and legs, each piece etched with markings that probably meant something important in Uxkali culture. His 4 arms were wrapped in striking guards that looked like they could punch through starship hulls. He moved like violence given form, each step deliberate, each movement a promise of pain. He looked like a warrior. He looked like a legend. He looked like someone who was about to murder a human in front of 300 witnesses and call it training. They met in the center of the hall, the smart material floor rippling and then solidifying into a regulation combat ring. 30 meters in diameter, marked with lines that glowed faintly blue. Outside those lines, the match was over. Inside them, anything was legal, as long as it didn't violate the safety protocols, which were now active, Jason noted. Medical monitors floated at the edge of the ring, their sensors locked onto both combatants. Impact limiters hummed in the air, ready to deploy force fields if either fighter took damage beyond acceptable thresholds. The works, just like Jason had requested. A referee stepped forward, some species Jason didn't recognize, tall and thin with too many joints, and began reciting the rules in a voice that suggested they'd rather be literally anywhere else. Standard galactic combat rules apply. Match ends when one combatant yields, is rendered unconscious, or is removed from the ring. Lethal force is prohibited. Permanent maiming is prohibited. Everything else is encouraged. Medical intervention will occur automatically if life signs reach critical thresholds. Do both combatants understand and accept these terms? Yes, Rockmal said. Yeah, Jason said. Then, fighters ready. The referee raised one too long arm. Begin, and stepped back very, very quickly. Rockmal didn't charge this time. He advanced, methodical, all four arms up in a guard position that covered every angle of attack. Professional, controlled. The stance of someone who'd been fighting since before Jason was born and knew exactly how to dismantle an opponent. Jason didn't move, just stood there, hands at his sides, watching. Not going to run? Rockmal asked. Where would I go? We're in a ring. Smart humans run before the ring. Yeah, well, Jason said. I've never been accused of being smart. Rockmal struck. Not the wild, angry punch from yesterday, but a combination. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut, all four arms working in sequence, each strike flowing into the next. It was beautiful, in the way that hurricanes are beautiful. Deadly and unstoppable, and utterly without mercy. Jason moved through it like water. Not blocking, not really, just not being where the strikes were. A step here, a lean there, a turn that put him inside Rockmal's guard for half a second before he flowed back out. He wasn't faster than Rockmal. The Uxkhali's strikes were blurs of motion that the human eye could barely track. But he was always moving before the strike arrived, like he knew where it was going to be. You're reading me, Rockmal said, not a question. You telegraph with your shoulders, Jason said, ducking under a hook that would have taken his head off. All four of them. It's subtle, but it's there. Then I'll stop telegraphing. You can't. It's biomechanics. Your species' musculature requires the wind-up for power generation. You could train for 100 cycles, and you'd still do it. Rockmal's mandibles clicked in frustration. He pressed harder, faster, combinations turning into a continuous assault that forced Jason back toward the edge of the ring. The crowd was roaring now, a wall of sound that made the air vibrate. Jason's foot touched the glowing blue line. One more step, and he'd be out. He stopped, retreating. Rockmal's primary right arm came in for a straight punch, the same one Jason had caught yesterday. This time Jason didn't catch it. He redirected it, a small movement of his hand that sent the strike past his shoulder, and stepped into the opening it created. For a moment, they were close enough that Jason could see his reflection in Rockmal's chest armor. You're favoring your left side, Jason said quietly, just loud enough for Rockmal to hear over the crowd. Old injury? Shut up. Your breathing's irregular. When did you last sleep? I said, shut up. Jason stepped back, hands up, giving Rockmal space. You don't want to do this. You don't know what I want. You want to hurt me because I made you remember. Because looking at me, you see someone who's not afraid to be vulnerable, and that makes you angry because you've spent 10 cycles building walls so high you can't see over them anymore. Rockmal roared, an actual roar, the kind that made the medical monitors spike in alarm, and charged. All 4 arms extended, going for a grapple that would end with Jason on the ground and Rockmal on top of him. And then it would just be a matter of time before something broke. Jason didn't dodge. He stepped forward into the charge and caught Rockmal's primary right wrist again. The same wrist, the same grip, like they were replaying yesterday. But this time, Jason didn't stop the charge. He used it. Redirected Rockmal's momentum, turned the charge into a stumble, and suddenly the massive Uxkhali Instructor was off balance, falling forward. Jason caught him, wrapped his arms around Rockmal's chest, and held him up, kept him from hitting the ground. It looked like a hug. It looked like a tackle frozen mid-motion. It looked like something that didn't belong in a combat ring. The crowd went silent. Jason leaned close, his mouth near where Rockmal's ear would be if Uxkhali had ears in the traditional sense. He whispered something. The medical monitors picked up the sound but didn't broadcast it. The crowd couldn't hear. Only Rockmal heard, and Rockmal went completely still. They stood there, human holding Uxkhali, frozen in the center of the ring. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then Rockmal straightened. Jason let go, stepped back, hands up again. The Uxkhali Instructor raised his primary right arm, hand open, palm forward. The traditional Uxkhali gesture of yield, surrender. The match is over, and I have lost. The crowd exploded. Not in cheers, though there were some, but in confusion, shouting, demands for explanation. The referee looked like they wanted to file a formal complaint with the universe itself. But the match was over. Jason had won. The human had defeated the legendary Rockmal without throwing a single strike. Jason walked to the edge of the ring, stepped over the blue line, and kept walking. Didn't celebrate, didn't acknowledge the crowd, just left through the east corridor like he had somewhere else to be. Ixolith caught up with him 3 corridors later. What did you say to him? Jason stopped, turned. His expression was tired. I told him I knew about his son. I told him his name. I found it in the memorial records last night. And I told him that his son wouldn't want him to become what killed him. That's it? That's it. And he just yielded? He yielded, Jason confirmed. Because sometimes the hardest thing to do isn't fighting. It's stopping. 3 days later, Rockmal requested Jason as his assistant instructor. The official reason was to provide human perspective on combat training methodologies. The real reason was that Rockmal had started sleeping again, had started teaching instead of punishing, and needed someone around to remind him why that mattered. The Uxkhali's opposition to human membership in the Galactic Union quietly disappeared. Turned out that when you prove you can defeat their best without throwing a punch, people start taking you seriously. Jason stayed at the Institute for 6 more months, trained recruits, talked to instructors, made friends with a crystalline being who chimed when they laughed and thought humans were the weirdest species in the galaxy. On his last day, Rockmal walked him to the transport ship. You never wanted to fight me, the Uxkhali said. No, Jason agreed. I wanted to help you. Why? Because you were in pain, and I'm pretty good at noticing when people are in pain. What did you do before you came here? On your planet? Jason smiled. I talked to people who were having the worst day of their lives and tried to make it better. Hostage negotiator, crisis counselor, that sort of thing. Earth didn't send a warrior. No, Jason said. They sent someone who knows that the hardest battles aren't fought with fists. They're fought with words and patience and the willingness to see someone at their worst and still believe they can be better. He boarded the transport. The door slid shut. The ship lifted off, carrying the human back to his little blue planet. Rockmal stood on the landing pad, watching it go, one hand resting on the memorial token over his heart. And for the first time in 10 cycles, he smiled.